Welcome everybody to this LinkedIn live session. This is part of our interview series that I do as part of my YouTube channel called Video Analytics 101, where we discuss different topics that are interested around video analytics. So if you're not subscribed yet, head over to YouTube, type in Video Analytics 101 and subscribe there to get more content like this. We're doing this type of interviews once per month, so you will see one of those things every month. We're doing that in LinkedIn as a LinkedIn live session. And today we're talking about ONVIF Profile M. And I'm very happy today to have Hans Busch with me. He's a manager at the R&D organization of Bosch, but much more importantly for today, he's actually the chairman of the technical committee at ONVIF. And as such, he's responsible, or the committee is responsible for the 30 specifications as well as the profiles that ONVIF has. So thank you for being here, Hans. Thank you for taking the time.
Welcome.
Okay, let's start right off. Maybe let's start off with the basics. ONVIF Profile M is a new profile. It was just released in June, so it's super new. Maybe Hans, can you start us off with explaining what is Profile M?
Well, Profile M is for getting interoperability for video analytics, and this is of roughly 3 parts. Most important, it's getting the output of your special analytics algorithm that are developed by different vendors in different cameras to the video management system on the other hand. And for that, there is a metadata specification called also scene description that standardizes how outlines information is conveyed. Beyond that, we have the configuration part of the analytics, specifying or enabling products to specify what can be configured. Let's give a simple example. This is not about complicated stuff for uploading reference models or whatever, but just telling the algorithm, oh, I'm interested in finding dogs or finding cats, so that you get some means of configuration which is standardized and enable standardized UIs on the VMS side for analytics algorithms.
Okay, I mean that's actually very timely because just this year we saw so many camera manufacturers coming out with new AI cameras and AI chips and providing more and more analytics on the cameras themselves and on the edge. So yes, that's very timely. One thing that I was wondering when I saw the release of Profile M was how is that different to the video analytics specification? Because the specification of video analytics in ONVIF has been around for 13 years, and you find things in there that how a vendor can define what the color of a scarf is or a car or whatever. So what is the difference between a profile and a specification in general?
Yeah, profiles built upon specifications. If you look at the profile specification, it's quite short. So you're surprised, where is the content? But it reaches out to the specification and also very important to a test specification. So a profile is not only about the technical content, but it's also about conformance, meaning ensuring that a product conforms to the specification. And that's done via the ONVIF test tools. We have test tools for clients and for devices. So to get Profile M conformance for your device, you have to implement the mechanisms that are required, and you can also implement part of the optional mechanisms. But in the end, the test tool ensures that you are compliant via self-certification.
Yeah, actually, I saw on the ONVIF website there is a PDF where for every profile you see what's mandatory and what's complementary or optional. So I find it very useful when studying what is the difference between different profiles. There's actually a very nice overview PDF that shows it to you. Okay, so basically a profile is for the end user a certain kind of guarantee or so that different systems can work with each other. So if a VMS is self-certified with a profile and a device, then you know that they can work with each other, right?
Yeah, so of course, doesn't do any miracles. So if a camera cannot detect dogs, then you will not detect dogs with that. But the specification allows a VMS to find out whether the camera can detect dogs.
So so let's say a VMS would build some kind of well, alarm system or so to detect dogs. Then before the user would configure this, it would ask the camera, is the camera capable of detecting dogs? And if yes, then the user can configure it. And if not, then this option is not available.
Yeah, it's even nicer. You get a drop-down list depending on your implementation, but you get a list of what is available, and you can select from that. So it's trying to get some really convenient user interface experience on the VMS side.
Okay. And in the future, I mean, video analytics is changing very fast. We see this AI trend everywhere. So if in the future a camera starts to detect frogs, or I always like the example of broccoli, because one of the deep learning data sets out there, one of their things is that they can detect broccoli. So if one of the cameras starts to detect broccoli, then the profile doesn't need to be amended, right? Then the camera can just announce it, and maybe it's added to the specification, I guess.
Well, at the moment, ONVIF is really at very high levels. So they have the class concept. So you can extend that proprietary. You can have well-defined classes. At the moment, we have a human, we have a car, we have a bus, a bicycle, things like that, which are common. If a vendor is special on fruit or plants, he can do his own variety. If multiple vendors think, okay, it would be good that we standardize the fruit area, then they can ask ONVIF to extend and go to GitHub, make your proposal, and you get it in.
Okay. This reminds me, I guess Profile M has been in the works for quite some time, and there are many manufacturers present in the ONVIF consortium. In general, how do you have any overview over vendors supporting this profile in the near future? Is that something
that's very hard to guess, because ONVIF is a volunteer organization. So we know which vendors have contributed to the specification over the years. We know which ones have worked on the Profile M development and making sure that it succeeded as such. I was really astonished to see within a month 50 conformant products to Profile M. So it's something I have never seen before with any profile in such a short period of time. I also saw a company which wasn't even part of the development. So as ONVIF is a really open consortium, we are not a profit organization. It's up to the manufacturers to do what they think is important for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to say, I also think it's very important that Profile M is coming out, and that probably one reason is that maybe the industry was waiting for this. I was in the recent years, I was always studying what kind of metadata is coming from the cameras, what could be leveraged on the VMS side, and I was surprised how different it is from each vendor, because there was no fixed compliancy there. So maybe that's one of the reasons that all the vendors actually want to comply to a standard, but there was nothing like Profile M there before. We had actually in the run-up to the event, we had an interesting question around MQTT. Maybe for everybody, MQTT is a pretty lightweight protocol to where clients and a broker can communicate. And nowadays, it's used a lot for IoT devices. So the idea is that an IoT device can communicate with the server, for example. And it's interesting that MQTT is actually mentioned in Profile M. And the question was around actually security when communicating with MQTT, how this is being considered and if this could be an issue.
Well, if we look at video surveillance as a whole, it comes historically from CCTV, closed circuit TV system. So it was all unencrypted, but it was a closed system, physically disconnected. Nowadays, we have two two areas. We have still these closed systems, which have their own, well, an IP network, but it's their own separated IP network, and you do plain text communication over it without any encryption. For that, you can use plain MQTT as the base standard, but you'd also have a lot of applications nowadays for going on over the internet. Their plain text communication is a no-go. So you have encryption. Typically, you use HTTPS or TLS encryption, and similarly, MQTT also supports TLS encryption. So it's up to the area where you apply it, and you have to take the right choice.
Okay, so the profile doesn't force you to do anything. It's really about like all the other data that you have in a security or the video surveillance system. You have to make sure that it goes over a secure channel or is in a secure network.
Well, if you provide support for MQTT, you have to implement both the plain text and the secure mechanism. So we don't see nowadays really a choice that you go just for unencrypted communication at all.
Yeah. I mean, in general, of course, this is becoming more and more important. We see the cybersecurity issues, of course, with cameras as well, and the zero trust principle is basically implemented in our industry finally. What are again, I find it interesting that MQTT is in the protocol because in the profile because it also speaks to the fact that cameras are becoming more and more like IoT sensors, or could be like IoT sensors. Are there any applications that you had in mind when putting it into the profile?
Well, any profile development start with this number of use cases. So you think about what type of use cases do you want to solve with the approach, and one of them, if you have analytics is typically something where you have expensive hardware because you want to do a sophisticated computing, but the output can be very simple. And the idea back in the mind of the engineers was, okay, we want to have this expensive capability, but we want then to connect that to a home environment, to other automated IoT systems, and how can we leverage that?
So one application could be just a simple thing. If a person is detected going into the home, then the lights go on, or I don't know, the alarm system goes
Yeah,
on.
but that's of course beyond ONVIF and the video surveillance device, because that's something that's done in the home automation. It's just the connection to it.
Yes, right. Okay, well, that's interesting. Maybe one final thing that might be interesting. ONVIF basically is promising that it's a standard to support different kinds of systems. So in a way, ONVIF is very much, or looks to me like a proponent of open systems. So different cameras can connect to different BMSs. And in our industry, we have seen different trends. Initially, of course, it was all closed systems with CCTV. Then it went into more open platforms where we maybe are today. But increasingly in recent years, we see new vendors coming out with closed systems, mainly startups or vendors coming from other industries. So definitely there is a trend out there towards closed systems, so proprietary cameras and proprietary BMSs. How do you see it from an ONVIF perspective? Do you think closed systems are the future, or will it stay open?
It's very interesting how you see it, because one of the success reasons for ONVIF were the open systems. If you look back at CCTV, it were de facto open systems because they were using the broadcast standard, the BNC connector. I don't even know whether you can remember it from the past, but that was the standard, and also the voltage and frequency rate and things like that. So that was a standard out there. And when we started with IP technology, all the companies, everyone did its own variety. So there was no compatibility anymore. And that was the success story of ONVIF to standardizing that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in that time. So if we look at nowadays, of course, you can do much faster your closed system. It's probably easier to configure because you build everything in. But the big advantage of ONVIF, and which I sometimes also thought is just a bit a nightmare, in the committees, people saying, well, I have this concern, I have that concern, and we also have to look about this aspect and that aspect. And that really made a lot of reviewing of these open standards, making sure that they are secure and making sure that they are interoperable. And we have seen a number of glitches from companies with closed systems. And it's typically because, yeah, it's security by obscurity, and you're not sure whether it's really secure. So that's why we think as ONVIF, well, we open, everything is public. You can look into every specification, and we are happy if we get any feedback that are security concerns. We haven't had almost any.
That's an interesting aspect. Obviously, from a VMS perspective, I would also see the security of your investment. So if you buy hardware, you can reuse it with another VMS if you have an open system. But basically, you're saying an advantage of an open system is actually the security of having a standard like ONVIF that has been checked by many different people, many different companies. So basically, with a closed system, you're trading, you're getting simplicity, but potentially opening up security vulnerabilities to the outside.
Yeah, it may be. It must not be. If you put a lot of development effort into it, you may be secure as well. But the other aspect that you say is also very, very important. If you look at a small garage, fuel station or something like that, it doesn't matter. You buy a system and you take the cheapest one, and if it's no more working or the fees become too high after 2 years, you throw it out and you buy another one. If you're looking at an airport with thousands of cameras or a railway system with tens of thousands of cameras, you're not going to throw out anything. So it's an investment that you put in there, and the cameras are hanging there for 10 years, 20 years. So there you have to look for an open system so that you are not locked into one vendor.
Yeah, I think this aspect about security investment is definitely something you have to consider when choosing between open and closed systems. We have maybe one question that we could address in the chat. Somebody was asking, at what type of applications are Profile M compliant cameras used? If we can give some examples about what kind of analytics could be used with a Profile M conformant camera.
Very tough to answer, because if I'm looking at the different vendors, they are offering a variety of analytics algorithm, from simple crossing line algorithms or entering area algorithms to complex AI algorithms. It's just because it's just about the interface. ONVIF always is just about the interface. It's not standardizing the implementation, and this gives the big freedom. And yeah, I always think we should think about Lego blocks. You buy from different vendors different functionality, and you combine them together with your video management system.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, and it's also important because the market is moving so fast that something like a profile could never keep up with all the new capabilities and so on. So it's providing the interfaces the way it should be, basically the framework, but the applications themselves are really driven by the camera manufacturers and the features on the cameras. Maybe I can add some from my experience. What we see in almost all cameras is some kind of person detection, some kind of vehicle detection, to get an alert if something like this is entering an area, or cross-line detection, like you mentioned. And the second thing is also increasing the forensic search, where cameras provide metadata, and on the VMS side, you can search through the video based on metadata. So basically, you can search for a person wearing a red shirt, for example, going in a certain direction. That is based on the metadata that the cameras are producing. So everything has to work together to really enable a lot of applications in the future. So basically, we already hit our 15 minutes, and actually that's a very nice segue, because as I mentioned, we're doing these interviews once per month. Actually, next month will be about forensic search, and it will be around how we leverage metadata coming from cameras for forensic search, and we're talking with Hanwha about this. So if you're interested, join us next month as well. In the meantime, as I mentioned, go over YouTube, go to my YouTube channel, Video Analytics 101, and subscribe there because there are a bunch of more videos around this. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you, Hans, for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. It was super interesting because one of the things we want to achieve here is we want to hear a little bit more of industry leaders, something that we haven't heard before in other channels. So I think we achieved it today here. So thank you, Hans, for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Florian, for the time.
Thank you, everybody else, and see you next month.
Bye-bye.